So greetings to our esteemed panelists and audience. I'm Anudipika Jain from the Public Policy Team Uber. And on behalf of Uber and T-Hub, I welcome you all to the panel discussion 1 as part of the Tech-Hance Mobility Series. Today, we will be discussing how cities and mobility can be planned together. Before that, I would just like to quickly introduce Uber and T-Hub to the audience. Uber is a ride-sharing application that connects riders with independent transportation providers and is currently present in 700 cities and 70 countries across the world. Uber believes that it can help transit agencies become more efficient by leveraging its technological expertise, and also shares the long-term perspective with the public transit of reducing congestion by increasing the effective use of the public transportation across the world. Uber has been partnering with public transportation agencies around the world since 2015. In fact, Uber has recently launched journey planning for multimodal integration in Hyderabad in partnership with Hyderabad Metro. Now, would like to introduce T-Hub. T-Hub enables and empowers an ecosystem hungry for innovation. Based in Hyderabad, it leads India's pioneering innovation ecosystem that powers next generation products and new business models. Incorporated in 2015, it has provided over 1,100 national and international startups with access to better technology, talent, mentors, customers, corporates, investors, and government agencies. T-Hub also provides thought leadership for Telangana and other state and central government organizations to build innovation ecosystem. Before I delve further into the topic to set the context today, I would like to introduce the dignitaries present with us. First of all, would like to introduce Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us on the panel today. Mr. Ranjan is the Principal Secretary of Industries and Commerce and Information with the Government of Telangana. His assignment involves developing policy frameworks, attracting new investments, identifying opportunities of utilizing IT in various government processes, and promoting digital empowerment of the citizens. During his administrative experience of close to 20 years, he has worked on diverse platforms such as industry promotion, tourism promotion, urban development, and natural resources management. Sir, I'm sure that every person present today, be it as an audience or a speaker, would agree with me when I say that you have been a constant source of support and guidance for all of us. We are thankful to you and the Government of Telangana for developing such a progressive policy ecosystem that it enables industries and individuals to collaborate towards a common goal of sustainable development of the state. Next, introducing Mr. NVS Reddy. Mr. Reddy is the Managing Director of Hyderabad Metro Rail Limited. He is heading the mega Hyderabad Metro Rail project under public-private partnership with innovative financial engineering and project structuring. He is very well known for his financial acumen, managerial ingenuity, open-minded approach, and leadership qualities. Even as Additional Commissioner of Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, he built a lot of public assets and amenities through innovative use of airspace and advertisement rights without spending from public exchequer. He's an expert in rail transportation and power sectors, finance, urban transportation, and urban governance. Sir, it's an absolute honor to have you on panel today and hear your insights on urban development and project management. We recently got an opportunity to work closely with you as part of the journey planning launch for Metro. Your vast experience and keen focus on innovation are key motivators for all of us who are engaged in the mobility sector. Moving on to Mr. Ravi Narayan. Mr. Narayan is the Chief Executive Officer of T-Hub. In a career spanning over 2 decades, he has been a product engineer, entrepreneur, investor, mentor, and a leader. He has co-founded 3 companies, which he led from their inception to their successful acquisitions. With a marked focus on creating world-class products in India, Ravi has been actively involved and instrumental in India's startup ecosystem. During his last stint as the Global Director of Microsoft for Startups, he helped establish accelerators and Microsoft go-to-market programs with startups across the world. He has also worked with multiple funds in Singapore to help them with digital transformation by collaborating with global startups. Thank you, Ravi, for coming on board. Now, moving on to Mr. Rajiv Agarwal. Mr. Rajiv Agarwal is the head of public policy at Uber for India and South Asia. Prior to joining Uber, he had worked with grassroots to global level as an Indian Administrative Service Officer. As a public administrator, he has had a career spanning 26 years. This included being a district magistrate in 9 districts across Uttar Pradesh, the most populous state in India. Amongst a host policy initiatives, he steered India's first ever national policy on intellectual property rights and was the lead negotiator with other nations on IPRs for the Government of India. He has to his credit the establishment of new organizations like the Lucknow Metro Rail Corporation, where he was the first MD. I welcome all the panelists on board today. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to learn from your insights and experiences across the sectors that you have been involved in. Now, I would like to introduce the topic to set the context on why we are here today and why we think that this is the right time to discuss this particular area. So we all would agree when I say that development is good. It means progress, it means intent to learn and grow as individuals and as a society. But does development always mean a better and sustainable future? That's a question that we are facing cumulatively as cities and society across the world. During the last decade, cities have grown at a rapid pace, but this development followed the path of least resistance. As cities grew, the land use patterns changed and more private vehicles came on the road. The focus shifted from movement of people to the movement of vehicles, and roads got broader. This further led to congestion and more people and more roads. However, across the world, policymakers, thinkers, and solution providers have started realizing that we can make cities livable and devoid of congestion by increased focus on encouraging use of transit or public transportation, multimodal integration. Hyderabad is one such example, which has been a pioneer in the technical adoption when it comes to public transportation, urban landscape, and all other solutions across the sectors. Policymakers are trying to find ways of switching to transit-oriented development for the cities where the people can be nudged to use transit options more and private vehicles less. And in light of all this, today we all have come together to discuss that how cities and mobility be planned together. We are sure that we would be getting some extremely implementable and useful insights from our esteemed panelists and brainstorm on the possible way outs for policymakers, urban and mobility planners, and shared mobility providers in the given context. So now, given that we are done with the introduction, I would like to quickly jump on the discussion, open the floor for discussion. My first question would be to Mr. Reddy, given his experience in project execution in urban planning framework. So how do you think that cities can make transport-oriented development an integrated part of urban planning?
Hello, Deepika. This is Jayesh Ranjan here. Mr. Reddy just messaged me a few minutes ago that he's having some audio problems. He's not able to hear us all at all. Can you recheck?
Hello?
Yeah,
am I audible?
Am
I audible
yes,
now?
You are audible, but can you hear us?
Yeah. Now I can hear you people.
Okay. So please switch on your camera and participate in the panel discussions.
Yeah.
Mr. Reddy, I hope you had heard the question. Should I repeat?
I didn't.
Okay.
Can you please repeat?
Yes, sir, please. Yes, I'll do. So my question was to you that given how you've been working with Hyderabad Metro on project execution, how do you think cities can make transport-oriented development an integrated part of urban planning?
Yes, see, TOD, transit-oriented development, is an important aspect of city planning in all modern cities. I was earlier additional commissioner in the Municipal Corporation of Hyderabad. From then onwards, see, we've been thinking about how do we develop Indian cities as TOD cities, so that basically majority of the people who are living in the city shall be able to access public transportation within a few minutes of either walking or any feeder services, etc. So we have declared in Telangana Hyderabad as a transit-oriented development city. Okay, along the mass transit systems, along the public transportation systems, we are densifying our corridors, and we are seeing that in the majority of the people they stay nearer to the public transportation system. That's how we're ensuring. But just by building a metro rail or any mass transit system, it will not solve the traffic problems of the city. You need to have intermodal integration. In this, say, I'm happy that you have come up with this solution. It will further add to our multimodal transportation effort. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Reddy. My next question would be to Mr. Ranjan. So when we talk about the transit-oriented when we talk about the transport-oriented developments, of course, there are multiple other parts when it comes to how do we ensure that traffic movement is tracked, how we ensure that people are aware about the right protocols which are to be followed, presently also in the COVID-19 situation. So, what is your take on how can we ensure that the city can use innovative practices? How do we encourage the use of innovative practices across the city, specifically in terms of public transportation? And how do we bring all these stakeholders together?
Yes, Anudipika. So, very good afternoon to all of you. While you were posing this question, you spoke about this COVID time. So, this is something which we must be very conscious about. That while the present pandemic is disrupting many things, it is going to have a very big impact on the commute issues also, particularly in large cities. So, I would like to point to 4 trends. Of course, these are early trends, but I'm very confident that these trends will influence the way we plan for public transportation, we plan for TOD-oriented development, etc., etc. So one is that work from home is definitely going to stay. In fact, by no means can we say that we are out of the pandemic, even though we have unlocked and things like that. And in Hyderabad, there is a association of IT companies, which is called ICEA. Just 3 days ago, they brought out a survey. They surveyed more than 500 companies, and they were able to publish a survey finding which showed that till March, while March is also in a way we don't have much clarity about how the pandemic will be panning out at that point in time, but looking at some optimistic news that studies on research on vaccines are going on and some vaccines may be mass produced much earlier, there is a near unanimity, almost 99% to 100% unanimity, that till March there is no question of occupying our offices. And post that also, there is again a very interesting point in the survey. Many newspapers have published a survey, but somehow they missed this point, which is that those who can manage to remain productive at the same levels without coming to the office, they will be discouraged to come to the office. And another very related and interesting finding was that the levels of productivity are as high as 85% to 90% in most of the countries. So despite the fact that there are challenges of bandwidth and power outage and limited number of devices, multiple users of those devices, all kinds of in a conventional working class kind of a household, despite all those things, they are able to maintain 85 to 90% productivity. So right now, if you see the congestion and some of the challenges of urban living that we always talk about, commute for work is a very big contributor to it. So if the work pattern itself, the spatial distribution of work itself is going to be now in decentralized millions of homes, then obviously that will have a very important impact on commute. Another very big taker of public transportation are the students. Now, I'm the Vice Chancellor of a university these days. I am the officiating Vice Chancellor of the Technology University in Hyderabad, that is called JNTU. And ours is a large university. We are both a teaching university and a degree giving university. We have 240 colleges. And of course, while face-to-face education will be started at some point in time, but in this period, we have realized that online teaching is definitely having many advantages. The most important advantage is that we can get the best faculty from anywhere in the world take classes. The faculty doesn't have to come to Hyderabad or go to some remote place to take the classes. He could be in the US as well, and he can take classes. So this is a very big value add, that you are able to get lectures delivered or concepts explained by some stalwarts. So the future, I'm 100% sure, will be again of blended learning. So the number of classes you have to physically go and attend will come down, and therefore it will have a bearing on this commute. The third very important trend is that, as you know, the pandemic has disrupted multiple sections of economy. For our own country, I'm sure all of you are aware that in the last quarter, the GDP contracted by some 24%, which is I mean, mind-boggling. To say that the GDP has fallen down by a quarter is, I mean, it is catastrophic, and obviously it will take many years for economic revival to happen at the pre-COVID level. So one very important fallout will be that very consumption patterns will change. So if I have a car, my interest to buy a new car, even if you introduce some great model in the market, that will be dampened, that will be subdued. If I'm having a scooter and I was thinking of converting that into a car, maybe I'll defer that decision. If I don't have anything at all, maybe I'll live with it for some time. So this will also be a kind of a push or a driver for more number of people relying on public transport. So looking at the sum total of all these trends, and there could be many other trends as well, which will have a bearing on urban development and our commute, etc. We now need to start foreseeing things. What kind of public transportation is required? See, while the lockdown brought lots of miseries, etc., but one thing which people appreciated was that the environment became less polluted. I mean, as you know, lots of memes were being written that people can see Himalaya sitting in Hyderabad and stuff like that. So, but the point was that the sky was clearer and less number of people on the roads, less number of cars on the road. So the good old days when everything was quiet and normal, people felt that those days are possible to recreate. And obviously there will be some kind of public demand also, that have some kind of a manageable public transportation system. So all these are important factors. So as agencies who look at city planning, or agencies who are involved in planning for public transport, even regulating private transport for that matter, we must be able to understand and assimilate what these trends speak to us, and how a modern city or a progressive city like Hyderabad should plan factoring in all these trends.
Thank you, sir. Definitely, we couldn't agree more on this. That definitely COVID times have changed the patterns of commute and how traffic moves. Given that, sir, as you were mentioning about the economy, the GDP contraction, and the consumption pattern changing, uh, also we have been observing, as we are reading in the news, that there were certain sections of society which were largely dependent on public transportation, and they still are. And given that during the pandemic situation, when public transportation was not accessible for people, uh, it caused huge discomfort to that section of society. And then of course the public transit agencies were well prepared for this, and then the cities came together and the economy set moving. So my question would be to Rajiv on this, that Rajiv, given that we see that public transit can provide the easiest way of equitable access to the commuters across the cities, and also while public transit agencies were present, but there is a need for extending the reach to multiple people across the cities, to the remote locations as well. What role do you think first mile last mile connectivity would play when it comes to the integration with the public agencies, public transit agencies, and also for the shared mobility sector uh, at the larger ecosystem?
Uh, Thank you, Anupika, for that. And I must say, sir, it was a pleasure listening to you. And we know the kind of tough times society is going through, and especially at the state level, for the governments to juggle between the safety of people and tackle COVID, and yet at the same time keep the economy moving. It's a very tough call, but one that Telangana has done admirably well. So I'll digress for one more minute before I come to Anu's question. Uh, I uh, I was heading Lucknow Metro when we had actually paid a visit to Hyderabad. Good old days, I think 2012 or 13, and Mr. Reddy had just taken over. So we'd actually come visiting to see how is Hyderabad Metro coming up and what kind of financial model, the VGF model that they had adopted at that time. So how is it coming up and how things going to shape up? So it's a matter of personal pride for us that drawing back from those learnings, we were then able to come to Lucknow, and now Lucknow Metro is also running. So, uh, and coming to your question, there is no doubt about the fact that public transit is something which is a sine qua non. There is no option to public transit. Public transit is needed for all cities, and it is something we have to make sure is there as a robust, obviously safe, especially in terms of COVID, etc. So that is something which we have to build upon and make sure that it is a system that is there to serve people. At the same time, I'm recognizing the strengths of public transit along with certain gaps, which is primarily the first mile, last mile. Now, a mass rapid transit system cannot go to the doorstep of each customer, of each rider. So how do we make sure that we provide a seamless service to the citizens, to the residents from their doorstep to say a metro station, and then the last mile connectivity from the metro station to their destination? And that's where the other options of shared mobility, of other modes of transportation, so to say, come into play. We could always say that let's have private transportation, but then that would actually be, maybe uh, I might say it might be doing disservice to society if we start only pushing for private transportation. Can we find more economical, more feasible ways of serving the first mile, last mile connectivity needs of the people? And that's where, as we tap with the Hyderabad Metro, as we tap with other public transit systems, with buses also, to see how we can provide a seamless multimodal kind of system for people from doorstep, from literally from door to door. There are a lot of things which currently are on. We do talk of transit-oriented development. We do talk of mixed development, land use, etc., so that the mobility needs are reduced. But even then, there'll always be more and more need for people to travel, for entertainment, for meeting people, for societal needs, for work-related activities also. And so it's from that point of view that ride sharing and the entire sector actually comes to play a major role. And how can we, it could be in terms of ticketing. So it could be a touch of a button, you reach your mobile and you're able to buy a ticket from end to end. It could be in terms of booking different modes all at the same time. So you're not necessarily having to go on each mode and buy a ticket separately. You could also pre-book your seats, for instance, on a bus, if it's an intercity bus or something. So there are various things that can be built in. And the beauty of technology is that it allows us to do all this. And that's why we need to leverage technology as we provide the seamless experience to people. Yeah. Back to you.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for this insight on the tech integration part. Now, as we see that the public transportation and even the mobility sector, so to say, is up for disruption. There are multiple ways to which tech partners can come together, work with the public sector, try to find the solutions which are actually relevant to the current challenges. Given this context, my question would be to Ravi. That Ravi, what kind of role do you see an incubation center like T-Hub, or even like as a partner to the government, the way T-Hub works, can play during such circumstances? Is there a way to encourage pilot projects at the state, at the federal government, to encourage these startups to take up these kind of problems and solve for them?
Thank you, Anudipika. Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, indeed, it's been a very interesting and challenging times for all of us. Startups are usually ones that are supposed to be the most nimble and the most aggressive in their taking on new opportunities that emerge. And suddenly here they see a plethora of opportunities all around them. While it is definitely a challenging time economically and health-wise for all of us, for startups and their health and their economical progress is definitely predicated by their opportunity, or rather their propensity to take on new opportunities and do certain things. So the tectonic shifts that are happening with the large infrastructural public transport and those kinds of things, which most of the time can only be taken care of by larger players, the government and other larger players, are definitely making some inroads for a lot of startups to also start playing in a small way, because infrastructure changes are happening in a large way. The streets and the all the way from parking spaces to all have been repurposed. So there, the movement of traffic, the usage of urban area is all changing so quickly. And who better than the startups to actually move quickly and start filling those gaps? But obviously, the larger infrastructural plays, the ones that take the larger investments, will continue to thrive, but they will need the partnership with startups to actually do much more than they were able to do before, not because of the fact that they're not capable of doing that, but the landscape is changing so rapidly that the nimbleness is something that you can't have at the same time have the sound foundation that some of these public infrastructure brings at the same time. So how do you create a good partnership between these large players who have not just incumbency but also have a very good understanding and the credibility and the trust of the citizens, but at the same time bring in such technological capabilities that only startups can do and move very quickly with the needs that are opening up around us? So I think that's where we feel that we have that window to the government, window to all the players, to what is possible from the startup world. What is it that we can tap into? What are the new technologies that we can bring to bear? What are the new business models that are possible? Given that these players are continually evolving, they are where the rubber meets the road, right? They're always beginning to sense the new changes and quickly adapt to them. So some of the things that the context was set already by Mr. Jayesh, Ranjan, and Mr. Reddy and Mr. Aggarwal, but let me talk about specific areas where the startups are beginning to play a much larger role than they were playing, say, back in February of this year. So one is obviously the ability for us to create a streamlined view of data across multiple players all at the same time. The ability for us for the data to flow between them, the data, of course, keeping in mind the data privacy, data security issues, but continuity of the availability of data across, and the visibility of this data from a vantage point of across multiple agencies is something that a lot of these startups can very quickly address, and they're doing that. The other one, of course, is within the data, the GPS information, and so on. The other one, of course, is the ability to take care of payments, the ability for all of this to be monetized, and offering these as a seamless service to the citizenry is something that's very important, and that's something that a lot of startups are able to move in and offer their help in creating it. So while we say payment, it looks like a very small thing, but in itself, it's a earlier it was a monolithic thing that certain let's say system integrators that would actually build this entire payment system, but that itself has been broken down into, say, 100 different pieces, and each of these small pieces can actually be now solved very quickly by multiple startups. And then there are other things in terms of the new set of behaviors that we are trying to enforce: social distancing, safety protocols across all these things. How do you best take on these very fast, very quickly moving changes that are happening? Make sure that we are able to get this kind of information out to the citizens. I think that's where a lot of the startups again come into the picture. And so that's kind of the way they are quickly moving to make sure that nothing left gets unaddressed. And therefore, together, if you are looking at filling those gaps and creating those glues between very large tectonic plates, these are the ones that are able to very quickly glue them together, and therefore, at the end of the day, still provide seamless service to the people who are looking to use these the changing transportation landscape.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for giving such a beautiful uh, context on the startup ecosystem and how we can be nimble and modular, so to say, in terms of our thinking. Uh, uh, since we are talking about this, Mr. Reddy, my question to you would be that nimble is the word which is very important for us right now across the policymakers, across the mobility planners. So do you think that public transportation can become nimble? And if yes, then given that we were talking about the streamlined access to data, how data insights would help in planning ahead of times for managing the exigency situations like COVID period or disaster management?
Yes, definitely. See, earlier public transportation was basically considered to be in the domain of government, actually, because these are huge projects, say, involving billions of dollars. But Hyderabad, for example, was set an example that a $3 billion project can be built in the private sector. So I have seen the difference, actually, how governments build mass transit systems, how a private sector organization builds a mass transit system. See, in terms of design, in terms of, say, design efficiencies, in terms of engineering efficiencies, in terms of flexibility, we have brought in lots of changes in this particular project. So now we can take it forward. Of course, startups may not be able to spend the kind of amounts that are required for public transportation, but as number of speakers here are talking about, there's a lot of scope for these small startups actually to come up with technological solutions. Okay? So we are encouraging, for example, see, for first mile, last mile connectivity, we have encouraged number of startups actually to start these feeder services. Okay? And app-based, see, as you have come up with an app, actually, see, already you have introduced 4 or 5 apps, actually, see, where you can book, anybody can book a ticket, actually, for a number of services, which are integrated. So there is a lot of scope. Okay, we would like to encourage more and more people to come into this, become more nimble-footed, because that's how actually see, you have to make it sustainable, because most of these things are not easily financially sustainable projects. So you have to encourage, and there's a lot of scope. We will encourage, see, that kind of activity that's taking place. A lot of ideas have already been actually transformed into practical solutions. So a lot more activity is going on. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Reddy. Surely, of course, we would be needing a lot of push together for collaboration, for diverse stakeholders to come together and solve these challenges. So my next question is to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, that sir, you were mentioning about IT sector and how staggered working hours are the new norm that we are witnessing. But do you think that uh, in the current circumstances and if we start opening up further, uh, there is a role, is there a role of technology there where the traffic insights can be built in to understand the peak demand hours? and maybe that way the clusters, the industry clusters can be planned so that the traffic can be staggered across the day instead of having peak hours during evening and morning. Is there any project that Hyderabad is looking at, or your experience on this, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, definitely. So the data which is generated looking at various commute providers today is very insightful. It helps you in understanding, first of all, the important timings, the peak timings, as it is said, when commute happens, the destination, the origin, the modality of the transport. Mr. Reddy spoke about the multimodality. Unless we are able to bring in a multimodal system, we will be kind of, we will not be very comprehensive in our planning. So, since you asked about Hyderabad, in Hyderabad, this is one of the earliest cities. I won't say that we are the first city, but we are one of the early cities to have a planning body at a apex level, which is called the Hyderabad Urban Metropolitan Transportation Authority, UMTA or UMTA. I guess it was first started in Indore and a couple of other cities and then came up in Hyderabad. So UMTA from the very beginning has been collecting this kind of data. Earlier in the pre-aggregators days, etc., this data was collected by sending people to stand on the streets and record, and lots of these traffic consultants had provided this data to us. In fact, lots of this data was used for metro rail planning. Mr. Reddy will be aware and will be able to share more light on it. Similarly, when the outer ring road was built, we collected lots of data, but now lots of this data is available in an automated way using digital channels, etc. And we do have partnership with a company like yours. We access your data also. Right now, we are using it for two purposes. I mean, these are all pre-COVID experiences. One was to plan the deployment of traffic policemen. So, for example, when we would know that more number of traffic is going to a particular area in a particular time, so obviously the regulatory requirement, the requirement to control the traffic, to make it orderly, would require more deployment of traffic police. So that data was used for that purpose. One other insight which we were getting from that data was that if there is, let us say, too much of rush of private cars or public or let us say aggregator driven cars, etc., to a particular area, perhaps this also indicates that public transport through RTC buses, etc., is lacking in that area. So we were also sharing all those insights with the RTC, whether they can improve the planning. And I do note that for our IT corridor, which is located in an enclave called Hyderabad, new bus services, etc., were introduced from 2-3 pockets of the city, looking at that data. So data-driven planning is definitely very essential, and all the more so because in the post-COVID normal, very precise and fine-tuned responses will be required. As you rightly said, everyone will not be rushing to the office. Offices will be staggered to maintain that social distancing and things like that. So at what time do you require commute, for how many people, and what are the best public commute options, etc., etc. So definitely data-driven initiatives will be much more optimum in providing the solutions. And as a government, we would welcome all opportunities to collect that data, make sense of this data meaningfully, and of course, utilize that data.
Thank you, sir. As you were mentioning about RTC buses and of course the data-driven planning, my question would be to Rajiv. Rajiv, here when we talk about the data-driven planning for public transportation, given that shared mobility providers also have an access to data how commute happens, do you think that this part of the ecosystem would have a role to play for buses in terms of how they can plan their journey, how they can extend their reach to the people, and how this can be planned in a better manner, in a more efficient manner?
Yes, certainly. We have traditionally been looking at buses as a very low-end public transit system, and metros obviously were, treated as being something very glamorous in India. and rightly so. I mean, the kind of the mass rapid transit systems that the metros provide may not be there through other modes. That said, buses have come a long way, and in India too, not only in terms of intracity travel, but also intercity. We've had certain rudimentary systems being set in place where you can, actually go on a state roadways system and book a ticket or something. But it's been a very disjointed kind of effort. Here, if we look at buses as being part of the an integral part of the entire system, we can definitely provide solutions. So, if it's say Kerala traveling from say Kochi to Trivandrum, can we provide a system where a person sitting at home goes on the Uber app and uh, books, let's say, an auto or a cab to the bus station, books a seat on the bus also, and then at the end of his journey, again books a cab or an auto or something, and thus, without having to walk to the bus station or take a ride or something otherwise, and then try and find a seat for himself on the bus. He knows exactly when the bus is going to leave. He's assured of a seat, and it's all done sitting in the comfort of his home. So this kind of integration is possible. We've already done it globally. In fact, globally, we have gone beyond this to provide on-demand public transport. So, because in India, obviously, the kind of the humongous population that we have, we run on predetermined routes, but where the population is sparse. So, you may not need a bus service or a public transport service throughout the day. So maybe it could be an on-demand service. So it's only when a few people get together and, the demand for a bus on a particular route or on a particular road at a particular time. So these small minibuses or whatever, they take that route, pick up the passenger and provide the services. From what we have heard from public transit bodies and organizations in these cities, using the Uber services or Uber software as a service, I'll put it that way, the SaaS solution that Uber provides, they actually end up saving money. So the tickets become much more cheaper. The transport cost of transportation becomes cheaper for the rider, and the government or the local city authorities also save on money. They're not required to spend that much on public transportation. So it's a win-win situation for everyone, where we're using technology, we're using a ready-made platform, and yet providing better services at a cheaper cost. So, and in this entire scheme of things, it could be any mode. It could be buses, it could be minibuses, it could be obviously the metros or other modes also. So that's something we are looking at and something we can definitely leverage.
Thank you, Rajiv. Definitely, even the buses, I won't say the ignored part, but yeah, metros have been, of course, as you said, one of the more glamorous part of the public transportation, given the convenience. Definitely, I mean, given the current context, so another concern which not a concern, another pattern which we have generally seen across the city and also in other parts of the country, that social distancing being the norm, people are seeing the public transportation is being looked at with a concern that how this social distancing norm would be maintained when we go to the buses or when we go to the transit stations, when we move to metros. How is the public transportation system maintaining the protocols, and how do you think that technology is playing a role in ensuring that the crowd management, so to say, can be done in a more efficient manner? My question to Mr. Reddy on this particular context.
Yeah, it's really a challenging aspect actually, see, because public transportation, by its very definition, it is supposed to be a mass transit system. Say, huge crowds will be traveling, especially during peak hours. So now it's a real challenge. So what we have done is, see, of course, the travel demand has substantially come down. See, every alternate social distancing number of measures we have taken. So people to be, for the commuters to be physically maintaining the distance. What we have done is alternate seats actually we have marked actually that they can't be used. And similarly, standing also we have seen that at least 3 feet distance is there. So we have done the marking. We have also done the marking. We have identified what are all the congestion points at the metro stations and within the trains. So all those points we have identified, and we have taken enough measures to actually see people maintain the distance. Okay, but the challenge is, and of course, our people, volunteers are there actually to ensure that that's one aspect actually, maintaining the physical distance. Also, another problem which a major challenge is how do we ensure that they all follow the rules? And see, for example, see sanitation aspect actually, say all of them use sanitizers, all of them wear masks. Actually, some people have a tendency to remove the masks. So now, right now, we are counseling them regularly. Please ensure these things. It's not only your safety, it's also the safety of your co-passengers. So a lot of education is going on. So by and large, our experience so far is good. But as it increases, the traffic is daily slowly picking up. Though, I mean, before COVID, we were doing 400,000 passengers per day, which has, when the first day when we reopened, say on 7th, it was only 40,000, and now it has reached 80, 90,000. So far, it's fine. But as it increases, the numbers increase. Of course, we have to think of, so for that, what we are thinking is actually we're introducing more and more services. The frequency we are planning to increase. More trains we're going to present to the thing, especially during the peak hours. And we're also giving advice to people, please stagger your commute timings. So with this, we have to meet this challenge. Yes, it is a challenge.
Thank you, sir. But I'm sure that people are seeing the merit and the effort that the public transportation agencies are putting in to ensure that the safety protocols are in place. So now I would like to conclude the session. We have another session planned in which Ideation TS, it's one of the smart mobility provider which works with the government stakeholders on ensuring that the mobility challenges pertaining to ticketing and multimodal integration are handled in the cost-effective manner. So before that, I would just conclude the discussion. So thank you everybody for this panel discussion. And what I could understand from this entire conversation, the theme which has been a key part of this entire conversation has been that our modular thinking, how we look at the problems in bits and pieces now and try to solve them one by one using technology integration, and also how the mobility sector and the urban planning sector can come together to find synergy so that cities of tomorrow are better prepared in addressing these concerns in terms of providing access to transportation. These key things would be really important for us. And of course, being nimble, as Ravi had mentioned, that stay humble, stay nimble. That's what I can say. So now I'll request Ideation to start the presentation. I'll just check once with the organizers.
Sanjay, you must have received a message right now, which gives you access to share your screen. Sanjay, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I didn't get
great.
a message on my desktop. Can
okay.
Yeah, I think, can you just check?
Sure, one second.
Screen now?
No, we can't see your screen.
Okay.
Yes, we can now.
You can see my screen?
Okay, Sanjay, you can. Yes, we can see.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so Sanjay, before you start the presentation, I'll just give a brief introduction of Ideation to the panelists and the audience present. First of all, thank you, Sanjay, for joining us today for this session. So Ideation Technology Solutions Private Limited is a technology-centric ICT solution company, and it is based out of Kolkata with global offices in France and US. Ideation has technology platforms in the areas of transport and logistics, healthcare, BFSI, and environment areas, and has provided solutions to both domestic and international markets, primarily in UK, US, France, Ireland, Australia, and Middle East. Currently, Ideation is a technology partner with World Bank Group and has been providing smart city solutions and intelligent end-to-end multimodal technology solutions for urban transport infrastructural cases globally. In fact, Ideation has been the conceiver and implementer of the famous crowd empowering solution of Path Disha in Kolkata city and in the surrounding areas. So over to you, Sanjoy,
Thank you.
for the presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Deepika, and good afternoon to all of you. So, well, I mean, before I start, I have 10 minutes, I know. So the presentation will be divided in with some case studies, and before that, maybe 5-7 minutes, I'll just take you to the platform that we have implemented. But before that, a small, I mean, from the experience, when we talk about a transportation of a city, what we consider not only a passenger transport, but it should be a kind of both passenger and freight transport. So while working with the World Bank in multiple cities in India and other countries as well, so in both the areas, if really proper data-driven, in fact, Mr. Jayesh Ranjan has already mentioned about this. So if you can really plan for a data-driven the transportation planning for both passenger and logistics or freight, then that's probably the best way to handle the congestion as well as the mobility of the entire city. Start with what actually the platform that we have, which was initially rather funded by World Bank, and which is now running in Kolkata for around 4 years now. The same solution is as an OEM, it's running in the Maharashtra in MSRTC, supporting 18,000 buses. And another one for ELCOT in Chennai, which due to COVID is now in a bit pause, but they have started rolling out for the auto booking and all. So it starts with a planning, monitoring, and control majorly for the any STU, state transport unit or transport authorities, and then additionally it has a citizen connect and engagement. Of course, the data that it starts with the demand in real time and supply management. That's yes. Any question? Okay. So the idea is how with this whole platform we can reduce traffic congestion, allowing a multimodal transit plan and all. So in Kolkata, as you are aware, I mean, there are multiple modes, like even trams are included, ferries are included, and now with the electric vehicle, now Kolkata is running with 5 modes. And we have a bright plan. In fact, whether in this ecosystem, companies like Uber and other service provider can join, and interoperably they can work for the last mile, and wherever the normal government cannot provide the service, they can put the extended help, including transit planning for end-to-end through multi-modes. So that's how the whole architecture is about the platform that we already have. It has right from your route creation management, when the planning stage I'm talking about, including a regular basis route rationalization. That was the most important factor when we had taken this opportunity. I mean, this project in Kolkata, there were 925 routes, and each route was very congested. And I mean, it's like, average route size was 20 kilometers in a length. You can understand there are private buses, public buses, and I mean, and then there were 3 multiple STUs running on those routes. So given that situation, the first challenge was a regular route rationalization. So maintaining the SLA intact and providing the better service. So that's how it started. And then, of course, like the rest of the things are more or less we are all aware of, like a passenger information system, an app for the commuters, for example, even for the drivers, in the absence of a vehicle tracking device, which is now pre-built in all the vehicles, I mean the buses as well. We had given a driver an app to avoid potential bunching. It's like a very simple app, like and also drivers can input the crowdedness, and of course we can capture the demand in real time for that. For the commuters, it has been pretty successful with more than 650,000 users now in Kolkata are using this app. And the same app, due to COVID, it was, I mean, in Mumbai also will be launched very soon. Not Mumbai, in the whole Maharashtra. So we are just awaiting, but the has been tested and everything. So this app will give any commuters a real-time ETA information, trip planning, as well as ride sharing, which is a very small feature, but very useful when somebody is riding and they can share his trip with his friends and families like that. And another challenge we had faced, like how to let people know, like this bus is coming vacant, or it has even a place to sit or stand. So with the 3 color codes, green, yellow, and red, a commuter can input this information so that the other passengers waiting in the other stations, I mean bus depots, they can know, like this bus is coming red. If you see the color will indicate, so that they can avoid the bus and catch the next bus. And these ETA, I mean the PIS, passenger information system, in the depots as well as in the bus stops are pretty standard. 2 case studies I will quickly touch upon based on this framework, which I found in maybe worth sharing. One is real-time demand and supply. So when I say hyper logistics, actually it includes both passenger and this thing. So this was done in Indonesia. First we did for a company in Indonesia, Gojek. So their demand supply is a very similar operation like Ola and Uber here. So every 15 minutes you have to predict how many people will ride, from which zone in the city. Each zone means 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer square. So imagine there are thousands, I mean hundreds of thousands of drivers, both bike and cars. They're sending, the location, and you are capturing the demand from the app, and then you are calculating the demand within a geography of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. In some dense places it is much lesser, and then you are directing the supply to the demand and dynamically, so that you can avoid the surge pricing. Now the efficiency or the computing power has gone in such a way, like we are predicting per minute for every 10, 15, 30 minutes. So this is one of the example I wanted to share. And of course the key is the data here. And not only that, this dynamic prediction required to capture everything possible, like even local, even agitations, like some if there might be a political agitation in somewhere, so this data will be, of course, change the weather, holidays, and every other thing. The recent case study I would like to share, which in fact came out in the earlier discussion, how you really do the crowd control. In case of Metro, we started this, and the problem statement was given to us. Very interestingly, one single line problem statement. So Metro had 24 stations, and they have per train, there are 110 trains they want to run, and per train they have seen by analyzing not more than 400 passengers can travel. So this was the problem statement. And in Calcutta it's so congested. So then we had a statistical and some machine learning algorithms. So we took the past data from them, and they are a very simple user interface we created, and this become as already a hit. And now Metro is running for last 10 days, last week Monday, so almost 9 days now. It's very effectively, and every day we are tweaking the data based on the analysis, the data that we are getting. So very quickly, I'll just show you the interface. It's very, very easy. You see, it will ask for your name first, and then it will ask for your destination and origin, and then the slot when the person wants to travel. The slot is, we have identified the optimum gap of the slot is 1 hour is sufficient for Calcutta. And then if the slots are available, then it gets a ticket QR code based. If it is not, then the rebooking of the slot is requested. Now, and even for this crowd control, I'll just share my another screen. If you can see how, and we have shared this dashboard. See, this is the current figure as of now, say 2 days booking, for example. So this is helping us in 2 ways. The Metro can know the prior demand. You see, these are the 24 stations. And this color code, we are basically giving them color coded pass. So for every hour, the color code is different. So there is a visual validation in front of the door where the CRPF guys, Metro Police, as well as the Calcutta Police, they are there to check this visually. So it is in the entry point only. The passengers are restricted and they are coming with the designated slots given or allotted to them. So with this, we have complete data. How many passengers are, complete OD data. How many passengers are going from one station to another. So this level of granularity, for example, from this station, from Ravindra Sadan to this station, how many passengers is being traveled now. So this way, we are helping them and we are tweaking the data, but with a single final condition of 400 people, which is the threshold. Not more than that people can travel in one train in one trip. So that's in gist of my case studies. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with all of you.
Thank you, Sanjoy. Any questions, Mr. Reddy, Mr. Ranjan, or Rajiv for Sanjoy? Any clarification that you would like to have? While, of course, we can definitely connect 1v1.
This is a good app actually, if you're able to implement, especially I like the idea of this color coding for hourly commute. Is it working efficiently? People are able to, people are sticking to this color coding, and is it being enforced?
You can just, the public becomes so responsible, and you may want to call your colleague, in Metro, they love it. Now every day in newspaper, everywhere. In fact, after this success, we are planning for Central Mumbai, Metro 1, as well as Delhi Metro.
Good.
Yeah, so that's in fact, being very simple, people may not need to have a smartphone as well. So this UI being a kind of a conversational UI, or what we in technology we call it a chatbot, can be accessed from your any browser, in mobile, desktop, and anywhere. And people are used to WhatsApp, so it will ask you questions and you just answer. And 4 questions, and you have got a ticket.
Good. Here in Hyderabad Metro also, we are following especially this QR code ticketing we're issuing, and we have completely eliminated coins, because coins, they are a source of contamination, and it can. So
that's why
coins. Coins we have completely eliminated, and cash transactions we have avoided. You must be doing the same thing in Kolkata.
Yes, because they have stopped the coins. Only the crypto card is now being taken, which is a bit contactless. But in the next phase, they want complete QR code based.
Yeah, since many of our commuters, while most of the commuters do have smartphones, there's no problem. Those who don't have smartphones, here what we have done is this people with these mobile machines, they go around once the commuters come to the station, and they'll have to indicate what's their destination. On that basis, the QR ticket, paper ticket is produced, and that's given. That's what we're following here.
Correct.
Yeah.
So thank you. Any more questions?
That's it. Fine from me.
And thank you, Anudipika. Thanks, Rajiv. After a long time, I see you. Good.
Thank you, Sanjoy, for joining us. Thank you. Good.
Take care. Bye.
So I'll just open the forum to Q&A. We can start taking questions. Over to you, Sandhya, for opening.
Thanks, Anudipika. We do have a few questions, and few very relevant questions which were discussed today as well. A few extension to what was discussed today by all the panelists. So one of the first questions that was asked was that, of course, when Ranjan sir or everyone is talking about scattered work hours, or Mr. Reddy was talking about how that would be the way forward now. Is there something like that to be implemented for schools and other sectors also, which have that time as the time for them to go and do work, or to go colleges, to go study and everything? So is that something in the plan? I think like Mr. Reddy, Mr. Ranjan, either of you can pick it up if you want.
What exactly is the question, please?
So like apart from just work hours, is something like that, something like, scattered work hours or scattered school hours or scattered college hours in plan?
Yes, that we are requesting, see, different educational institutions, offices, and other workplaces, see, to follow staggered timings. Especially, most of us, see, most of the cities, what you have is you have morning peak and evening peak. If they're able to adjust their timings, actually, so the peak hours can be extended, they can be distributed. That's an ideal solution. We have initiated the dialogue with different bodies, educational institutions, different factories and other places where maximum commute is generated by these things. Actually, hopefully, see, right now, of course, there's not that much of congestion still. As the congestion picks up, actually, see, I think by then people will fall in line. These organizations will adjust their timings.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Next question, I think, is for Rajiv, sir. The question is from Uday Mehta. It goes as follows. Generally speaking, shared mobility is dominated by certain groups, the socio-economically privileged, for example. How do you think we can diversify mobility and shared mobility in particular?
Thanks, Uday, for that. So there's no doubt, shared mobility, the very concept is that it has to be economical, it has to be for the entire society and not for the so-called rich or the socially or the economically more advantageous groups. So I remember from my childhood, we just couldn't even think of taking a taxi. We could either go on our own scooter or something, sitting with my dad, or maybe take the DTC buses in Delhi. So a cab or a taxi was simply out of question. Autos maybe, but not beyond that. But today, the ride-sharing industry has actually been a great leveler. So anyone could become a driver. You don't need, irrespective of what will be your background, so long as you have the necessary skills. Plus, in terms of riders, you could belong to any social class, you could belong to any economic class, and the services are there for you. And as we move ahead, and here I guess I must it's something I'm very proud of as an Indian. India has actually been a game changer for the entire industry. We have brought in the low-cost models from the initial black limousines that Uber was looking at. We today have Uber Auto, something which is unheard of otherwise in the world. We have an Uber Moto, a two-wheeler taxi, which comes at a very, very low price point. So the very fact that low-cost products have come in actually goes to show that now it is no longer something which is there for only a certain section of the society. And then obviously you can have carpooling, you can have other systems also, and coupled with public transit systems, we can actually make sure that we provide the necessary mobility solutions to everyone, and we serve the needs of everyone.
In fact, the ordinary people pick up technology faster than us.
Yes.
Because they realize the value of it and pick it up very fast.
True that. Okay, so moving on. Next question, I think, again, is for Mr. Reddy or Mr. Ranjan. What measures government is taking to ensure health resources in public transportation? Any plans to implement health pass solutions with a protocol?
Sorry, again, please repeat.
What measures the government is taking to ensure health resources, in public transportation? Any plans to implement health pass solution with a protocol?
Yes, protocols we have already, see, what we have done is, all the metro MDs, we have brainstormed how do we run in the light of this COVID restrictions, how do we run these metro services actually. So we have evolved a number of protocols. and all protocols have been circulated to all the metros. We are following all these things. Basically, the social distancing aspect, okay, physically separating the people, the commuters, actually where they should sit, where they should stand, and what kind of sanitization needs to be done. And air conditioning is, for example, say one major concern. And say when we were thinking of reintroducing metro services, one concern expressed by a lot of people is that it's a closed environment. In a closed environment, when air conditions are AC is working, it is likely to spread the disease. Actually. So for that, then we came up with a solution that actually, see, earlier it used to be 25% of fresh air used to be pumped into the trains. That we have increased to the maximum of 60 to 75%. So like that, then see, number of these solutions have been found, and then we have also increased the dwell time. Earlier used to be about 20 seconds or so. Now at the stations we have increased the dwell time actually to, depending on the requirement, half a minute to 1 minute, so that see, the doors are kept open and fresh air gets in. And terminal stations also we're doing the same thing. And another thing what we have introduced is actually, see, at all the metro stations we have introduced, see, we have converted one room into a COVID treatment room in case of any emergency, while of course thermal scanning etc. is done, and only those people who are not having any symptoms, they are allowed to board the trains. In case anybody is found, immediately he or she will be shifted to that COVID room. Their isolation is followed, and immediately we have contacted we have established contacts between the metro organization, the police organization, and the local medical authorities. And so immediately within a few minutes, actually he or she will be shifted to the designated hospital where the treatment can be given. So like that, a number of measures have been taken actually to see that the disease doesn't spread, because you can't sit at home, you have to commute. Many people have to commute. So, and at the same time, there is a worry that actually this public transportation can spread this COVID. So to balance that, we have taken all these measures, and so far there are no complaints. Actually, hopefully the situation would continue like this.
Okay, thank you, sir. So that's it from the questions from audience. Over to you again, Anandipika.
Yeah. So I think then that's it. It was a really insightful discussion that we've had today. A really engaging one. And once again, thanks to all the panelists for joining us today, sir, and giving us an opportunity to hear from your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ravi.